Or as my grandfather used to say, he was like a lifelong traveler. He would never say, where are you from? He'd say, where'd you start?
Oh.
And I love that.
I have the idea that Americans think the French don't have a sense of humor.
Oh, well, those are uneducated Americans.
And what cliche do you think we held against the Americans that may be true or might not be, actually?
Oh, that we're all rich. What's that old saying? Listening is the cost of being heard.
No.
If you give no evidence that you've listened to the people in front of you, why the hell should they listen to you?
Hi, everyone. What happens when you take someone that is a mix of cultures and you drop into the most culturally complex city in the world? Well, at least in France. Meet Tamer. Tamer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, thank you for coming. Okay, so, let's start head on with this cultural mix. You said you would never fully anything, like not fully American, not fully Egyptian, Muslim, Jewish.
Yeah.
Well, first, can you tell us about your background and why you say that?
Sure. I was born in Cairo, Egypt. I have a Muslim father and a Jewish mother. And what I thought was a huge hurdle and burden to bear when I was a kid ended up being a gift when I got older. Especially in the times that we live in now, I think it's easy to manipulate people based on race or gender or spirituality. And at a very young age, I learned that on my Muslim side, when they would talk poorly about Jewish people, I knew they were good Jewish people. And on my Jewish side, when they would speak poorly about Muslims, I knew they were good Muslims.
Sorry, I didn't ask. Where are you from, actually, in the U.S.?
Los Angeles is where I grew up.
Okay.
So my whole childhood was in East Los Angeles in the 80s. So it was like a very specific place and a specific time.
Do you have an accent from there?
I think so, a little bit, but my accent's
you tell me if he has an accent. I'd like to know that.
My accent's kind of muddy, because some words, I think, will sound like East LA, and then I spent the majority of my adulthood in New York City and the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Even in Manhattan, like, there's parts of the city where the accent's a little bit different.
Okay.
I'm from the Lower East Side, but for me, I see more similarities between the Lower East Side of Manhattan and East LA than I do from one part of LA to another part of LA.
Oh, wow. Well, I wouldn't be able to pick that up, so I'll trust you on this one. And so, you're in France and you're doing comedy, which is a fun word in French, because a comedian is an actor.
Sure.
In French. So.
Yeah, my name is a fun word here, too.
Oh, yes.
It means your mother in French, which is weird.
I must admit, I thought about it.
I'm sure you did.
So that's being, we could say, an outsider, but not in a negative way, in every room, in a way, makes you funnier, you think? Does it?
I think so, yeah.
Does it what got you into comedy in the first place?
100%. I mean, like, using the New York metaphor, everybody wanted to live in New York. But if you live in New York, your view is New Jersey. But if you live in New Jersey and you're an outsider, your view is New York. And so what I always didn't want to be was an outsider. And what I found out as I grew older is being an outsider was my superpower. It was my gift. It gave me a perspective and a view that most people didn't have. It not only towards other people, but even towards myself. And I found out that even though I wasn't fully Arab and I wasn't fully American, I wasn't fully Jewish, I wasn't fully Muslim, what I was this thing in the middle. And that thing deserves its own sense of identity, too. Even if books don't recognize it or there isn't a passport for it, I can recognize it and respect it and be proud of it.
This is you.
Yeah, I'm like the dog that's a mutt. I don't come with papers, but I'm healthier and I'm smarter than those weird-looking dogs at the dog show.
I will quote you, so I'll have to read that, because there's a quote you said, I think it was really interesting. You said you wouldn't change a single thing about how you grew up in the US.
Yeah.
But you're also so glad you broke up. What ended the relationship, if we see it that way?
Look, I think we need to start talking about power the way we talk about drugs. Everybody's done a little bit of drugs, everybody's dabbled a little bit of weed, but if you've got someone who's snorting cocaine all the time, you're like, that person has a problem. And I think in America, we have a problem with power. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, people get high on power. And I think what I saw in America, and I say this a lot, like leaving America, I'm happy I broke up with America, because America is like an ex-girlfriend that started doing heroin. I'm glad we're not together, but I don't want her to die. I love the memories that I built in America. I love the times that came from living in America, but I don't want America to get credit for it. I think of it like almost like Michael Jackson's dad. You know, like a lot of people say, oh, Michael Jackson is so talented because of his dad. And I would say, no, he's so talented despite his dad. And America's kind of like Michael Jackson's dad, where it wants credit for the abuse. And I'm like, no, my eyes are wide open now because I'm no longer under your roof. I live in Europe now, and I can look back at my time there and realize that I didn't become good at what I did because of the abuse that I was given. I became good despite that abuse.
I like that.
So I think America is like a restaurant that doesn't treat you well and wants to still say it's the best restaurant in the world. And it's like, no, that's a moving thing, and it's an evolving thing, and it's a living thing. And I don't think America's treated its citizens well for a very long time. You know, this idea that people used to have of, blind loyalty is absurd. I think you should live where they treat you best. That's the definition of democracy to me, is live and give businesses your money when they treat you right. And if they don't treat you right, take your business somewhere else.
Yeah, but with your wallet.
Yeah, and I think country is just another name for company. It's a company. They take taxes from us and they give us services. And I've been giving America a lot of money, and I've been getting very little in the form of services back. So it's just a shopping decision. I'm a more informed buyer than I've ever been when it comes to citizenship. And I think that's the way we should think as citizens of the world nowadays. You know, I'm not a conspiracy theorist in the sense that I believe in things that no one believes in. I'm a conspiracy theorist in the sense that I don't believe in things that people still believe in. I don't believe in the idea of country. You know, like there was a guy at a show one time who said, God bless America. And I said, let me ask you a question. Do you know what God would say if he actually heard you say that? He'd say, what's a country? God didn't invent countries. There are no maps inside the Bible or the Quran or even the Torah. Those are not maps. Like wars created country. And the people who created wars are not the type of people whose rules I want to follow. So I don't believe in countries. I believe in behavior and personality, and that's how I want to judge people. It's not where are you born, but how do you act? You know, I think if that happened in the world, if we started accepting that as a new unit of measure, not defining who people are by where they're born, but treating people based on how they act, I think we'd be in a more mature place.
Yeah, you are what you do, what you say you do.
100%. Or as my grandfather used to say, he was like a lifelong traveler. He would never say, where are you from? He'd say, where'd you start?
Oh.
And I love that.
That's a good way to put it.
Where'd you start? Exactly.
I like it. Speaking of that, you know, in a way, countries, because people are selling the US as a melting pot, or at least this is kind of the tagline.
Yeah.
But actually, would you say that France is a better melting pot in that regard?
I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, I wouldn't change the path that I took. I think America's a phenomenal place to go when you're young. I think it was a good place to be abused. Because it gave me a work ethic that I will outwork people that are much younger than me, and I like having that thirst. And even though it was a product of abuse, I like the muscles that it built. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think Europe is the kind of place to go to when you've decided, I want to enjoy life now. I still have a passion for the art. I still have a passion for the things that I want to say and do, but I also want to enjoy my life, and I want to give more of my attention to the people that I love. And I think that's easier to do in Europe. So I think it depends on what chapter of your book you're on. You know, if you're in the young, if you're young and you want to develop muscles and you want to reach the top of your game, get your ass to New York City, and you know, iron hardens iron, and you know, write comedy with people who are willing to sleep in their cars. You know what I mean? Well,
yeah, I saw one on your content. I saw you mentioned some things you did, and after you even did like a full 1 hour show in French.
Yeah.
In French.
Not yet, but that's
just
coming.
After a few months of learning it.
Yeah, I started in December, and I'm almost at B2 right now with my French.
Yeah, but so, you did do like a stand-up comedy show in
not
French?
Yet.
Oh, no, not yet.
Not
okay.
Yet. I've done like an open mic.
Yeah, that was it.
But only like 5 minutes or something.
Okay,
like
but that's...
Yeah, but I'm getting there.
It requires... what level of insanity does it require?
100%. You're absolutely right. It absolutely requires insanity. You could say part insanity, but also part love of history. You know, if you look at human behavior and you look at the Olympics, you know, it wasn't that long ago when people said it was impossible to run faster than, to beat a 5-minute mile, right? To run a 5-minute mile. And then someone did it. And then the very next year, if you couldn't run a 5-minute mile, you couldn't even be in the Olympics. So having belief, I don't think is insanity, but maybe believing something that others don't believe, it looks like insanity. But yeah, 100%. I think you can learn a language faster than they tell us we can.
Because you've done comedy in France though, in English, but maybe I'm biased, but I have the idea that Americans think the French don't have a sense of humor.
Those are uneducated Americans.
Okay.
I think French comedy is brilliant. I think it's very strong, and the TV shows, films, the writing, the acting is extremely high level.
But do you perform? I mean, do your heart is the same here that we would be or would have been in the US?
Is what
Like
the same?
the comedy is the same, or is it?
No, it's different for sure. But I think I wouldn't compare it like even Steven. But I'll give you an example. In New York, I used to do 10 shows a night.
Oof.
No joke. And I wasn't even the busiest comic. And I could do 10 shows in one night. On average, I'd probably do 8 to 10 on average. Here, it's maybe 10 shows a week.
Oh,
and
wow.
when I went back to New York to visit, I was intimidated a little bit because I'm like, I've been gone for 6 years, and now I'm going to perform with these other comedians who are performing 10 times a night. And then I got up, and I had no reason to be intimidated.
Do you think this is because of more of a hustle culture in the US?
Hustle culture and the geography of New York. New York is very big this way instead of that way.
Okay.
So in
it's
one
more
city block,
concentrated.
you can have 5 comedy stages. You know, so especially in the West Village and MacDougal Street in particular, you can easily do 8 sets on one city block within one night. But then when I went to New York and I watched all the comedians, there was a pacing and a confidence that you could only get from being abused in New York. But when it came to the content, it was a lot of comedians brilliantly speaking about the exact same thing.
Okay.
Because they all took the same subway, they all ate at the same diner, they all performed in front of the same audiences in the same clubs. And then I came in living in Europe for 6 years, and I was so different that what I had that they didn't have is in between the jokes, I had silence. The audience was leaning in and listening to me because it was, not only was it funny, it was interesting. And I realized, like, oh my God, if you want to be a better comedian, be a more interesting person. And I think that's not something that they want to prescribe in America, because that goes against a level of control. Don't leave, don't travel, because if you do, then you're un-American, you know? When really, in actuality, it makes you a more interesting person. And I think that's the best way to become a better comedian, is to be a more interesting person, a more curious person.
Do you have an example of a joke, for example, that would kill in New York, but that dies completely in Paris?
Oh man, any joke about the L train, about the subway system, or about Puerto Rican people in Washington Heights, or slang that Italians use, marron, you know, they do an Italian slang or Puerto Rican slang, or the mashup between very specific cultures, that would not work here at all.
Okay, yeah.
I actually see it a lot in America. Like,
Is the audience French usually, or what do you think in France when you perform here? What do you think the audience is like?
Well, I've made an effort to make a bridge with French audiences.
Okay.
So there's always a percentage of audiences that are French.
Okay.
But there's a big expat community as well. But definitely, it's so much more interesting to come into a place and bring in kind of like the local influences that, and that happens in every city and even in parts of France.
Yeah, sure.
I could just say things in Marseille that wouldn't work in Paris and vice versa.
You also made it across, so like you moved from the US to France. Yeah. What is one of the, I would say, biggest lie that people believe about that move to France, you know, like back from the US? I suppose you still have people there, connected.
The biggest lie?
Yeah.
Like stereotypically about French people.
Well, I mean, we're up for the cliches.
I mean, it's really funny. Like, of course, there's the biggest cliche to me, which I find funny, which is that French people are rude. Right? And it's funny to me because I think the request from French people is quite fair. Be polite. Be polite. And I think what happens in America, and this should be something that we should look at ourselves a little bit, which is people in America sometimes will be like, hey, they brought me my food, but they didn't smile. It's like, yeah, they're not your slave. They're not supposed to do anything more than bring you your coffee. You should question, why do you want to control other people's emotions on top of getting your product? It's this power trip that happens to people. And I think women probably know this more, is that men who are weak men, who do not have power in their daily lives, tend to try to abuse their power or seek out power outside. And I think that's a symptom in America, is that you're not just buying food at a restaurant in America, you're getting to act powerful for 1 hour. That's what the tip's for.
Yeah.
It's that I get to act like I'm your boss for an hour, because in my real life, I'm not a boss. And I love that in France, you don't get to do that.
I can relate. I've seen in real life, I've seen an example of this where I didn't see the beginning of the argument, but I was seeing like what is probably an American person. I was arguing with the baker in a pastry shop. And so, well, the American guy was like, in the US, customer is king. And then the French baker, that was the most French answer ever. He answered back in English. It's like, yeah, but in France, we decapitate the king.
Bravo.
And look, you could see the culture shock exactly like you described.
Yeah.
It's like there's an expectation that's different on both hands.
Yeah.
And basically, in France, you get what you're sending across.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I'm not trashing America. Like there's a joke that I often tell, which is I said I was at a party in France, and this guy said, you know what I think about Americans? I think they're stupid, I think they're dangerous, I think they're ignorant. And I was like, oh yeah? You've only met the ones that travel. Like, and it's true. You know, a lot of people that complain about Americans here, those are the good ones. Those are the ones who've been exposed to the outside world. You have no idea what the ones are like that are in the bubble. They're much worse. So I also am a big believer in, especially in the area that I grew up in, where there was a lot of drugs and stuff. I don't blame the users of the drug as much as I blame the dealers of the drug. So while we can complain about Americans, my complaint is not about the American people, it's about the American government who pushed them to. Our culture comes from the way our government treats us. It's like you can't blame a bad kid for being a bad kid. You have to question the parent sometimes. And I think in America, the way that our culture has been built and the way we've underspent on education and overspent on military and created films to support this belief system that being a man means being mean and being abusive, and being educated is almost something that they mock or make fun of. And in actuality, that's how they control you. Stay stupid. Don't read. Don't question things. And if you do, then you're less than a man. And those are the things that we need to question as people, is to understand that governments are not there to help you. They're there to control us, all of us. And I like the French relationship with government, which is question your government and challenge your government. And if you do have that job, it's not going to be easy, buddy, because it shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mentioned this saying from the General de Gaulle, who used to say, how do you want to rule a country where there's more than 350 different types of cheese?
Yeah. It should be complex. I've said this before, where I said, I understand why some people hated Biden. I understand why some people hated Trump. I don't understand why anybody would love either. Do you know what I mean? They are not people to be loved. You know, but Trump is on a different level. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I'm with you. France also is, well, again, I'm very biased, but it seems to have a different relationship with identity or identities, especially if we compare that with the US.
Yeah.
Would you say, or do you feel you're more free in France, or is it just like differently labeled?
Oh, 100%. I think you're more free in France. I mean, I've seen it now with my wife. Even when I speak to my wife on a daily basis, a lot of times when you're a comedian and you're going into a new culture, it's not enough to learn the language. You do have to learn the culture and make an effort to understand the culture. And when I talk to my wife about my education versus her education, and I bring up, writers and philosophers like Molière or Voltaire, and she starts telling me that she read about them in 5th grade. And I'm like, I didn't even know who they were till university. Or the fact that her mom told her, don't go to school today because there's a manifestation. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She was in junior high school, and her mom told her, oh, if you want to go to the protest, you don't have to go to school. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I think we're in America, they teach us how to take tests well and how to pass tests. In France, they teach you how to think. And I think that's a much more important skill, especially if you want to make leaders instead of followers.
I think this is it buys into a cliche, a cliche that, I have, and I think a lot of French have, where we think Americans are obsessed with productivity. And also, like vice versa, I think there's a cliché for the French where we're obsessed with, the art of living, l'art de vivre à la française.
That makes sense, yeah.
So we could say living. So would you say those clichés actually are true or have legs?
I mean, I think there's some truth to it, absolutely. I think, there's going to be people who will argue and say, like, yes, it's great that French teach philosophy, but there's certain teachers in French schools that are like, no, this is the way that it is, and I'm the dictator of the class, blah, blah, blah. So there's exceptions to the rule. But when speaking in terms of generalizations, absolutely, I think there's a real truth to it. And I think the way that you see it is when people don't feel like they're being watched. How do people behave when they don't feel like anybody's watching them? And I think if you compare the average person in America and in France they seem a lot more calm. When they get upset, but they seem a lot more calm. I also had this other experiment, which was, there was a show called Caesar Milan. Mm-hmm. He would train bad dogs, right? Like, people would call him and say, this dog's misbehaving. And the theme of the show every time was that there is no bad dog. He's not training dogs how to be better. He's training owners how to be better. And when people say, oh, my dog is racist, he barks at Mexicans, it's not the dog. The dog feels your nervousness through the leash, and then he barks at Mexicans. And that metaphor is very powerful today. Trump's behavior is on a leash, and then the dogs act out. But when I look at dogs in America, and I look at dogs in Europe, they're much more calm here.
Oh, okay.
The dogs are much more calm here.
And do you think because the French have this reputation, again, when compared to Americans, that we are cold or more cold. Because, let's be honest, I mean, it is a bit harder to kind of get a warm reaction. Like we don't hug. I mean, there's a bit more distance, at least up front.
Yeah.
First, would you say it's true, and how do you deal with that?
I mean, in my experience, no. I think because I'm American, I'm a little bit more extroverted, and because I'm a comedian. Yeah. Also, I think shame has less of an effect on me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm much more of an emotional nudist than the average person, so I don't mind looking silly. And I think it helps me with learning
so the
languages.
French react in kind, basically.
Yeah, I think, like, look, when I speak French to someone and they answer back in English, I say, sorry, I don't speak English. And then they laugh, and we continue speaking in broken French. And that's what I say to my friends who complain, oh, when I speak French, they answer back in English. I'm all, then what do you do? They go, then I respond in English. I go, then it's your fault. Be more stubborn. And you have a right to do that as an adult. I think, I don't think the French are more cold. I think the French are more real. I think there's a little bit of performative behavior in America, especially in places like the South, where they're well known for saying phrases like, oh, bless your heart. And the subtitle, it means, you know what I mean? When a Southern person goes, oh, bless his heart, they really don't bless your heart. They're saying, screw you. They don't like you. And I think there's a lot of that happens in America as people don't say who they really are.
Yeah, this is, I think, I'm shifting towards this, but it has a connection. Do you think this idea of the American dream is, in a way, is broken in America, but might still be alive or possible in Europe or in France in our context?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's alive everywhere. The idea, especially now with the internet, I think you can. The American dream, first of all, it's almost offensive to call it the American dream, in my eyes. I think there are things that happen in America that made you believe that if you worked hard and just in a matter of time, you would be able to achieve what anyone could achieve. But I liken it more to a lottery mentality than a work ethic, because if people really believed in the American dream, our universities would be packed with Americans. There's a lot of people who say, oh, Americans, I believe in hard work. I go, why did you not believe in hard work when you were in school? Why didn't you study hard? How come all the people that say, oh, I'm a hard worker, never got good grades? Like, why are you only a hard worker now that you work in a coal mine? Why are you only a hard worker now that your hands are covered in grease? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those jobs. That's perfectly fine. But don't shit on education. Don't say that that's wrong. I think in America there's this, I can be a millionaire one day, so I will vote for things that actually hurt me because I think I will become a millionaire. Even though right now I'm voting for things that are taking away my health care, taking away my benefits. I hate socialists, but I believe in social security. What? Like, it's just the cognitive dissonance is stunning to me. But again, I don't blame the users of the drug America. I blame the dealers of the drug America, which is the American political system.
Do you think it influences the way, well, the French, us, we see Americans, and what would you say some French stereotypes are true and or completely wrong? I mean, both.
I think every stereotype we have in America is actually who the French are. Really. I think the reason why the French gifted America the Statue of Liberty is because they saw behavior in the original Americans that were very French, rebellious. We, said, no, if you're going to treat us this way, we're going to take off and we're going to do things our way. And I think that was something that was admired by the French. And now, there's talk on the internet about the French wanting the Statue of Liberty back. This notion in America that the French are scared or, they don't do well in World War II. It's just propaganda. I think the average French person behaves in the way that I would imagine the average American person is supposed to believe. I do believe that the democratic process is more alive here. I believe that freedom of speech and protesting is more alive here. It's not perfect anywhere. We have problems everywhere. But ironically, I think the reputation that America has is more accurately lived in France than it is in America.
And what cliche do you think we held against the Americans that may be true or might not be actually?
Oh, that we're all rich. Yeah, that's
correct.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We have a saying for this. Tu me prends pour un Américain. Do you think I'm an American?
That's funny.
It's like if I see a quote and I think it's too pricey.
Yeah.
Something like any French would know this saying, like, oh, tu me prends pour un Américain. It's like saying, do you think I'm filthy rich?
Yeah.
That I can afford that quote. So it's not made as an insult to the Americans. It's made as like, well, only Americans are so rich can afford that.
Well, I'll go back to my original jokes. You've only met the ones that travel. You're not meeting the ones who are selling moonshine and living in their cars and living in motorhomes and then getting the land under their motorhomes taxed against them by major corporations that the government's allowing. It's crazy. So, yeah, I understand that metaphor because I think the most powerful weapons America has are not the bombs. It's the TV production studios and the film studios that we tell a great story and we distribute it really well. And because English became such a universal language, a bridge language between cultures, I think we are able to tell our story more loudly than anybody else. I don't think that had anything to do with our military. I think it had to do with our creative people.
That's interesting. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's easier if everyone speaks your language, indeed.
Absolutely, yeah. Then you can create your own story. And if the French do something to you 50 years ago, 100 years ago that you don't like, you can start crafting a story about the French being cowardly or not as brave as you are when there's really very little evidence of that.
Do you have to adjust your jokes? Because I suppose, like you were saying, in New York and in Paris, despite
100%.
the audience being potentially the same, like English speakers, they're not the same people.
100%. I think it's important. One of my friends asked me that. He said, you've been gigging in Europe for a while now. What mistakes do you see American comics doing? I go, well, it's not a comedian mistake. It's a traveler mistake. If I go to someone's house, I bring a bottle of wine. It's a gift to say thank you. That doesn't mean it shows it's something that you should do. It's expected. And I think when American comedians come to European audiences, they don't take the time. For example, if they're talking about gaining weight, they still talk about pounds instead of kilograms. It's such a small thing to bring a bottle of wine or to translate pounds to kilograms. It's just a bottle of wine that you're gifting them, saying, I'm giving you something very small, and you're giving me something very big. But that doesn't make you a better comedian. It makes you a better traveler.
Yeah, right.
I think that's what comedians owe Europeans when they come here.
Do you manage with
Of course, it's
the
not
miles
that
and the
hard.
kilometers and stuff?
Yeah, it's easy.
Right. Okay.
It's easy. I think you should adjust your jokes to European audiences the same way you would if you're having a conversation with a European person. Not expect them to know what you mean when you say, I gained 30 pounds. When you could, for the sake of the story, make it easier for them to connect and show them that what's that old saying? Listening is the cost of being heard.
No.
If you give no evidence that you've listened to the people in front of you, why the hell should they listen to you?
It's a good one. I like it.
Yeah.
And so, in that context, do you have maybe off the top of your head an example of a joke that would work in France, or that works usually, that wouldn't back there in the US?
Oh man, I have I have quite a few, actually. I think sometimes it has to do with attention span. I think in America, in New York, for example, there literally used to be a person who clicks the number of times people laugh while you're on stage. They called it LPMs, laughs per minute.
No, really?
And because of that, if you wanted to talk about something that was a little bit deeper, a little bit more philosophical, the audience would lose interest. You know, in a place like New York, where it's very like, let's go, let's go. Even here in France.
Laugh per minute.
Yeah. Here in France, I talk about growing up in a boxing gym and that I was told that boys don't cry. And that the first time I talked to my therapist and he found out that I haven't cried since I was 12, he said, that's not good. It's not healthy. And you need to relearn how to cry. In America, when I start talking about a guy who looks like me relearning how to cry, the audience would get physically uncomfortable. In Europe, they were tickled. They were pleased. They saw it as vulnerability and good storytelling. And I think they accepted the vulnerability and they applauded it in a way where in America they would look at it as like, oh, where's this guy going? I'm not comfortable with him talking about this.
Okay, yeah, no, I see.
I think it's more artistic here, I should say.
Yeah.
There's more colors in the... If comedy was a painting, the comedy paintings are more colorful in Europe. I can paint with more emotions in Europe. I can talk about what makes me sad, what makes me scared as a man, and what I hate. Whereas in America, they're more interested in what do you hate? Don't tell me about what you're scared of, because that's not... None of my heroes in American movies are scared. None of my heroes in American movies cry. But in Europe, you can paint with those colors, and I think it makes the comedy paintings more interesting.
And we were talking with the crew before this interview about the fact that the French language, in a way, doesn't have a neutral stance. There's no it in French.
Yeah.
And basically it pushes you into taking a stance.
Yeah.
Like you have to gender things, you have to, well, share your opinion, even if there's not much of an opinion. Like you have to decide on the side and share some emotions.
Yeah.
Because the French language, I think at least the French language, is meant to carry across some emotion.
Yeah.
Like the English language can do that, but it's not built for that. And exactly like you were saying, I think this is why the French language is more colorful, because you have to. There's no black and white.
Yeah.
Like you have to pick up colors.
100%. Absolutely. Especially as a comedian, you asked me earlier, are French people more cold than Americans? And I think as a comedian, it's like I'm a cook and words are my ingredients, right? And so I pay hyper attention to the words people use. And because when I'm in France, people do speak about their emotions more, I feel closer. So for me personally, I feel a much warmer feeling when I have conversations with French people than I have with Americans, because we are talking about our opinions and we are disagreeing, but without fighting. We don't need to fight. We can. I love when I'm speaking to a French person, they go, yeah, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Here's what I think. And we're still having a pleasant conversation. No one's raising their voice. No one's going crazy. It's
we love to argue.
Yeah.
That's one day. We do.
As we should.
Yeah.
We're experiencing life from different perspectives, and what a beautiful thing to look at something the way that somebody else looks at it.
I've learned recently, I don't know if it's genuine, but I like the story if it's real, that the French are known to be complaining a lot, and it would go back to the Renaissance era, where not having an opinion would make you look dumb.
Absolutely.
Like you say, what do you think about that? I like it. It's like you don't have anything more to add to the story that makes you look dumb. So people would have to add onto something, and basically the best way to add onto something is to criticize something, because you can always criticize something. It's harder, and so it became a trend. Yeah. And so the French are all doing it now, and like you have to add, otherwise you look dumb.
It's the culture of French salons, right? Yeah. Where it wasn't just about debate; it was about convincing someone to believe a different belief. And what a beautiful thing that two people publicly in front of a group of other people could be like, I believe this, I believe that. And at the end of it, one of them says, you know what, you changed my mind. That is amazing. That's beautiful. That's not something I've seen online in an American voice for a very long time.
All right.
I think it's the problem with the internet. It's given us artificial intelligence, but no wisdom.
It seems like the debates, in the US and in other parts of the world, if we're being honest, but it's becoming very polarized.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah, beyond polarized. It's not conversation anymore. It's sports. even if your team cheats, you're going to keep voting for your team. And that's not good for anybody.
The story, the clip you shared that I loved, like Americans are like dogs and the cats, and French are like cats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
and that's the way we should be. Like, we should remember that no government is on our side, that the person who lives next door to you, even if they're a different political party, is more like you than the person who's the same political party as you, but lives in the White House and goes on vacation to Epstein's Island.
Yeah, you can share for those who haven't seen your clip, the Americans are like dogs and the French are like cats. Can you reshare that clip?
Sure, yeah. Like, I think there's almost a demand in America for blind loyalty. The way a dog loves its owner, no matter how bad the owner is. Even if he hops on a plane and flies to Epstein's Island and diddles kid, the dog's still like, I love that guy. He speaks his mind. Yeah. Whereas the French are like, I know you've fed me. I know you've given me a roof over my head, but if you pet me when I don't want to be petted, if you touch me in a way I don't want to be touched, if you do something I don't agree with, I'm gonna scratch you. Or in Macron's case, they're like, hey Macron, your wife's a man. You know what I mean? Like, they have no shame.
That's exactly that. Yeah. So, sounds like us, indeed.
Well, I don't believe that, by the way.
No.
I think she's a handsome woman. I don't think there's anything wrong with her giving him a little slap. It's ridiculous. It's called, they're in a real relationship. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they were probably debating.
You know what she did that Melania Trump's never done? Touched her husband's face. Melania, she wouldn't even kiss that man on the cheek. Like, give me a break. Yeah, that's a real relationship.
I think, things are a bit more intense, but genuine in France. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
So well, Tamer, I mean, I could go on and on for hours, but I decided to keep this quite short for that, so that we can release the audience eventually.
Sure.
It is one of those conversations where I learn a lot, and I think you have very interesting angles and views. I really like that. I really appreciate you coming and sharing that with the audience. Before we wrap it all up, if people want to follow up or get in touch with you, where they can do that?
Yeah, Instagram's a great place, and it's Tamer Cat with a K, interesting, like a cat. My name is Tamer Kattan on YouTube, TikTok, everywhere. And then, of course, from Instagram, I list all my shows.
Okay.
And then my website as well, tamerkattan.com. It's all my name.
And you were saying you do stand-up in Paris, but now you're going to other places as well?
All over France. Paris is home now. Actually, we're moving into our home in like 3 weeks. I'm so excited.
Good.
And and I'm learning French 5 hours a day, every day. So very, very soon I'm going to start performing in French too. In broken French.
Well, broken French is fine.
Shameless French.
I do broken English, so you can...
No, I love it. It's great.
And so you're going to go to like Nice or other places as well?
Yeah, but Paris first. Paris is home, and then definitely going to go around the continent and learn as much as I can about the country.
Brilliant. Well, Tamer, thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.